Thank you for coming to the Midstream reading series. I'm Diane, Jarvenpa. It's the David Shove tradition to go around the room and give your name and what connection you might have to writing or books or as a writer, reader, teacher, whatever. So I'm going to start with this nice man here. Who are you? If you can give us your name and your connection to books.
Okay.
You can just sit where you are.
Where I am?
Yeah, because we're going to go all the way around the room and everyone's going to just...
We're just introducing ourselves.
Yeah.
My name is Kirk Wilson, and I write poetry and fiction and nonfiction. I've got a poetry book up here and a fiction book up here, and I'm glad to be here tonight. We're now official residents of the Twin Cities. We've been coming here in the summers for a number of years, and we broke in and bought a condo this time, so here we are.
Thanks, Kirk.
Hi, I'm Juliet Patterson. I write poetry and nonfiction.
And you're on sound.
And on sound. And she's a sound woman. She's a sound girl.
I'm Marg Walker, one of the co-hosts of the series. I'm a poet.
I'm Donna Johnson, and I write nonfiction, and yeah, good to be here. And I'm also the partner of Kirk Wilson.
I'm Carol Wickers. I'm a student of Diane Jarvis.
I'm Frank Hudson. I do a thing called the Parlando Project that's available online, where I combine literary poetry of various kinds from various people with original music that I compose.
My name is Jim Gabe. I taught writing back when I thought I could be taught.
I'm Paul Mattis. I'm a poet, one of the hosts, and I do the video, but not the sound.
I'm Richard Terrell. I'm one of the hosts, and I apparently don't do the sound either.
I'm Carol Rux. I'm a poet and a reader of literature.
Mark McHugh. I don't write, but
I'm Crystal Merriweather. I'm sort of all of the above. I was an English journalism teacher, and I know you can't teach writing either, so you can help, but you can't teach it. And I'm here because I learned about tonight's event through a man who will remain anonymous until he starts reading his poetry, but he was at the Sinclair Lewis Writers Festival last Friday and Saturday and did a marvelous job. Thank you.
I'm Tom Odendahl, and I'm a poet.
I'm Bill Patterson. I don't write, but I'm a friend of Danny Klecko's, who's going to be reading tonight.
My name is Danny Klecko. I'm a bread baker.
My name is Tim Young, and I'm a poet and writer.
Thank you all for coming. Let's just move into this since we're a little bit delayed here. So, Kirk Wilson's books include the story collection Out of Season, the poetry collection Songbox, the poetry chapbook, The Early Word, and Unsolved, a nonfiction crime study published in 6 editions in the US and UK. Kirk's fiction, nonfiction, and poetry are widely published in literary journals, including Conjunctions, Idaho Review, New England Review, Story, and others, and also in anthologies. His awards include a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, the Elixir Press Fiction Award, the Trio House Press Trio Award, Editors Awards, and other prizes in all 3 genres, and 2 Pushcart nominations. Please welcome Kirk Wilson.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you. I'm probably wrong as usual, but it seems to me that it's especially a challenging thing to be a poet these days because the world seems to be kind of winding down around us. And I feel like we're obligated to deal with that in some way, think about it, write about it, put it in our poem somehow. And it seems like a hard thing. I know there have been many, many hard things in history, but I don't know if there's anything quite so comprehensive as what we're dealing with right now. Anyway, the poems I'll read tonight come from a sequence called Travel. They don't really deal with going from one place to another. It's more a kind of a pilgrimage through that unwinding world, as seen through time and memory and different perspectives. Sometimes the speaker is an individual, sometimes it's a couple or a group. You'll encounter two named characters in the poems that are selected here, Mama and Daddy. You could think of those two as corporeal ancestors, if you like, or as numinous forces like Earth Mama and Sky Daddy. So, Travel. The poems don't have titles. Dear strange thoughts, who are my keepers, I hear you want to quit. You're tilting at the holy dirt and take up listening for silence in the place you felt earth. Last night I thought I saw someone across the water holding up a light. Wasn't it you who claimed it never mattered if we're haunted by the gods or beasts? So here's to bridges burned, to writing with an eye to the celestial, that single book to which you hold the key, which is to say, I lean on all your in-betweens, so don't forget, Augustine, our source on the eternal, told us the future is already done. This time I'm distracted by a cat, a gate, a knave. I'm fresh out of alms and questions, but I can offer you an empathetic stone I brought all the way from home. We woke up to a gift of info bursts flowering on our devices. Naturally, there were those who thought the moment of the loosing of the beast could be identified. In 954, the abbot Adso argued, the end of the world cannot be predicted, and in any case cannot come before the full restoration of the empire. Seals were issued bearing imperial legends. The emperor's robe was embroidered with scenes of apocalypse, so as to reveal a perpetual calendar of human anxiety. Come night, we were dancing on the bar and telling the story of the time Daddy salted the fields and told us he'd done so because without risk, there can be no salvation. The city is collapsing, but we found a villa. When the owner died, the magistrate ordered an inventory of all his possessions. The rooms are filled with points of view, opinions, memories of wind, moments of comfort, awkward silences, night terrors, regrets, awakenings, the first real surrender of the self. It's hard to stay balanced in one corner because of all the excitement that comes over the owner when he runs into the sea. By a window, we find the perspective of the Sidney Greenstreet character in The Maltese Falcon, who is deadly serious about his obsession, but when 17 years questing for the bird goes down the drain, he laughs. The owner has not so much acquired these treasures as they have accumulated around him. We have entered here a state of readiness to apprehend the future, about which much is settled. The dogs are caught in time. They know their names. The cars light up with their identities. Everything continues quoting something else, and the lips at the edge of the waters move higher up the curb. Chairs don't want to be chairs anymore. Cattle
don't want to die for us. Light bulbs aren't promising anything. And that shooting in the street, that's angels. Plus, the rumors say they're taking us to school. True, we've painted everything into a corner where shades are darker, things run away and don't come back. The sparrows disappear into the ceiling. Mamas crank the heat so high, we hear a shout across the way where there are only dying trees and statues and a passing messenger, and the children turn away from the windows. There's a breakdown in the road. The formless has lost interest in the formed and left it standing. So sometimes when I work on these poems, I get a little depressed. And I need to take a break and do something else. So the other day I was thinking about a song that I like by Bo Diddley called Who Do You Love? You know that song? It's a great song. So with apologies to Bo Diddley, here's a poem called Who Do You Love? Moons love the way they're stuck in orbit. Yellow flowers love naming electrons. Numbers love being counted, even when it wears them out. Memory loves the ground it came from. Layers love stacking up forever. Oceans love holding baby sharks. Stairs love intervals between steps. Afternoons love relaxing conversations with evenings. Walls love seeing things from all sides. Bullets love the chamber. Rags love being left alone. Turtles love investigation. Rocks love star charts. Time loves watching. War loves happening again and again. Seeds love train rides. Bumblebees love the theological concept of grace. Celestial loves the sound of itself. Blades of grass love thinking of themselves as leaves of grass. Holes love being converted into nests or burrows or warrens. Songs love being sung imperfectly. Stars love still shining after they've died. All right, back to the unwinding world. Hard to say what the rub is, so we turn again, variously lost and hurried, to make up what we are. Down one road after another, and who's to say what's better? Pure stone reaching into a facade, or that parade of empty lots we organized into a method? And anyway, what can it mean to rely on differences when the trajectory is always the impulse to give form? So we turn again, and love accommodates the body, and evidence is always available. And if we refuse to be dejected, we only assert a permanent need to live by the pattern rather than the fact, as indeed we must. We send out a marching band and listen as it passes the last bend, following a pillar of cloud by day, and by night, sky flash of fire or war. Dear origins, please change yourselves within ourselves. Lead us not into the valley where we turn the river off and oil it good. Mama's laid out on the table, long as the Danube. She gave it everything she had. A stain like a birthmark runs down her face, from mountain to valley, where the blood pooled. I climb all day and half the night to kiss her on the forehead. The stain is a marker of a moment in time. Time is something to know about. I recommend that you remember as many of its markers as you can. In this way, you can think of time as an acquaintance who leaves markers for you, but has no interest in them. Attention, please, because the cloud says, Daddy's not happy and chooses not to speak. That's silence right there. If you're not afraid to hear it, that's him. The city changed in the night when the cool undressed its streets, and opening a window, I might have seen sunflowers, downturned and giving up on the sun in favor of a past they had known in the ground. But in fact, I only see the little terror of yellow and black becoming butterflies pinned to green stalks, to the ascent of people I have cut through like a blade, and therefore carry, with the animals whose faces have followed me here. Last one. There I became a skinny brown dog, and there a pigeon with one eye on an old man on a bench, and the other on a hawk. I was always in love. I couldn't help it. My beloved was always evaporating. As a shadow in one place, I had to keep moving. I would lose my intensity, and when it came back, I was always surprised. I wanted to be a horse, and if not that, a flying insect who knows everything, but can't change even a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Juliet Patterson is the author of Sinkhole, A Legacy of Suicide, by Milkweed Editions, September 2022. Finalist for the 2023 Minnesota Book Awards, and named one of the best memoirs of 2022 by Library Journal. She's also published 2 full-length poetry collections. I was going to ask you how to pronounce it. It's Threnody is what I thought. Nightboat Books, 2016. A finalist for the 2017 Audre Lorde Poetry Award, and The Truant Lover, also from Nightboat Books. Winner of the Nightboat Poetry Prize, and a finalist for the 2006 Lambda Literary Award. Please welcome Juliet Patterson.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Kirk said. It's been kind of a rough week, but it's been kind of a rough year. I'm often full of rage and outrage, and I'm grateful to be here because I mostly find hope and love among artistic communities. Sadly, I'm not writing poetry right now, so I don't have any cheerful poetry to offer. I'm just going to read from my memoir, and just now I was like thinking, oh, I should mix up my reading here, so forgive me while I look for what I actually want to read. So I've been working on this book for about 10 years. It published about a year ago, and I'm a poet primarily. Never imagined I would be writing a memoir. I'm not an overtly autobiographical poet, so this was a big reach for me. Just to sort of set up the book for you, my father died by suicide in 2009. And I have 2 grandfathers who also died by suicide. My mother's father and my father's father. My parents never spoke of these 2 men, rarely about their lives and certainly not about their deaths. So when my father died, it felt like this door swung open and that I needed to unearth their stories. So 3 generations of my family come, on both sides, come from a small town in southeastern Kansas. My parents were the only people to have left that place and moved north to Minnesota. So I was born in Minnesota and made only a handful of trips to Pittsburgh, Kansas as a child. It's not a place I knew very well. So in the process of researching my grandfather's lives, I ended up being really interested in this town. So I did a lot of historical research, some of which you won't hear. To give you a picture of my grandfather's, one was a coal miner. He came from a coal mining family, and the other was a fiery, very left Democratic politician, almost socialist, who governed during the New Deal era, and in his district was the first Democrat to win in, I don't know, a handful of decades, and to this date is one of the Democrats in that region who got the most votes. I'm going to read 3 short excerpts from the book. One that kind of starts in the beginning and sets up the conceit of the memoir, and the second, if I can find it, which gives away kind of the title and the metaphor of the book. And then the last piece is just about my father, and I'll try to stay on time here. No worries. Here we go. All right, so this first scene begins on the day of my father's suicide. I was in a really serious car accident about a week before he died, and had a lot of soft tissue injury, and was out of work and in a neck brace and on Vicodin. Not great conditions. So I'm going to start. I get a phone call from my mother, who says that my father is missing, and then she finds the note in the process of being on the phone with me. And so then this scene is going to start when I've already arrived at my parents' house. The police arrived at my mother's house moments after we did. No knock or bell, they simply walked in. One officer escorted my mother to the dining room table. The other stood with me just a few feet away in the kitchen, asking a battery of questions. What's your relationship to the deceased? Any other relatives who should be notified? Are there people you'd like us to call? I stood with my father's suicide note in my hand, not reading exactly, but rather occupying myself as I answered those questions, flipping the paper one way and then another, as if to make physical sense of it. Only in this moment, on the day that he died, was I allowed to see and touch the note. The police would take it with them when they left as evidence. Morning news flared on a counter television, mixing with the muted sounds of an officer's two-way radio. The moment unfurled in slow motion, the odd visual constraints of the kitchen shifting into a sorry, I don't have quite enough light, into a disjointed and chaotic landscape of sound, television, radio, thank you, the furnace fan bursting through a heater grate, the whisper scrape of the police officer's jacket, and then his voice again. You'll need to make arrangements with the coroner's office. Here's my card if you have any questions. The first officer went outside, and I left the kitchen and sat down on the dining room floor. The room spun. My mother sat on the table, still dressed in a nightgown, leaning forward out of her chair. I heard the second officer, a woman, say, I've seen a lot of these kinds of things, hundreds of them, some awful stuff. I felt bodiless and strange, as if I had lost contact with the ground. I watched yellow light unravel on the carpet and against the second officer's black shoe. He looked peaceful out there, she murmured. Very clean, peaceful. The house went quiet with an endless pause. Maybe that will help you put your mind at ease. I turned my face to the window. Across the yard, a neighbor's Christmas lights blinked in a row of junipers. The day unraveled from there. A police chaplain came and went. A friend of my mother's arrived. Rachel made a trip to the store and brought back food to the house. I couldn't eat. By early afternoon, arrangements needed to be made. I telephoned the coroner, the funeral home. I answered questions I cannot recall. As the sun began to set and the day dimmed, I returned to the floor, lying on a pack of ice. And then, as we left my mother's house, in the darkness, I asked Rachel to drive toward the park. We turned left on Montreal Avenue, down the hill that led to the bridge. The rise of the structure loomed on the horizon, the crown, haunch, and ribs flat in streetlight. And at the sight of it, I wept. It was the middle of March, 2 years after my father's death, but already spring in Kansas. A drought that had plagued the region in previous years was coming to a close. It had been raining for several weeks, which made the weather humid and unseasonably hot. Magnolias blooming, the air thick with sweetness. It wasn't the first time I had returned to Pittsburgh since my trip with my mother to bury my father. At this point, I'd been back several times. On this visit, I spent the night with my cousin Krista, and the next morning I got up early to take a drive. On an impulse, I decided to drive to my grandmother Leah's house, not the house of my father's childhood, but the place where she lived for decades after Edward died. Driving there for the first time in many years, approaching from an unfamiliar direction, I made the wrong turn off Broadway. Afraid I might not recognize the house with a view of the porch, I drove slowly through the narrow streets until I reached an intersection I knew. There, a battalion of traffic barricades blocked the road. I parked the car, got out, and started walking. Under a canopy of trees, I noticed a white clapboard house resting on a platform of cribbing and beams that hung over the edge of a sidewalk into the street, strange and out of place. It was a small structure, box-like, a story and a half, but it looked enormous. From the street, I looked through the windows hung with flowered curtains. The interior was dark. It was hard to know if the house was empty. I couldn't imagine why it was on the sidewalk. Relocation, foundation repair. I slipped under the barricade tape and walked along the house to the curb. As I reached the sidewalk, now what was left of the house's concrete slab basement crumbling into a cavernous, gaping sinkhole. I called out into the yard. No one answered. The hole was frighteningly deep. From where I stood, it looked as if the lawn had been punched by a massive owl, exposing the ground's secret interior. A row of shrubs had been pulled into the void, littering the rim with branches and leaves, while broken concrete, pipe, and wire beetled everywhere. I had never seen anything like it. The terrifying alien world of a sinkhole, the earth turning in on itself, an obvious metaphor, one I couldn't ignore. That morning, staring at the hole, I felt as if I was looking into a realm that I could not enter, a world of dark earth, of broken rocks and minerals, of air and water, of all the things that had been there and would always be there, for which we don't often consider, and the sight of which, for some reason, made my hands tremble. I looked down to see the fencing, my fingers wrapped in the mesh. I turned and looked across the street. There was my grandmother's house. The drone of traffic rose and fell in the distance. An oriole flashed in a nearby tree. A train ground to a halt. I looked up the road where I could see a small strip of sky. I gazed in all directions, and the streets were empty. I walked toward the lawn I played in as a child. A high ceiling of clouds drifted above. My shadow stretched across the lawn and onto the sidewalk. I reached down to touch it, doubting its existence. As soon as my hands reached the grass, I sat down. I felt the familiar emptiness that had come with my father's death. I pressed my palms into the grass. The feeling didn't pass. It became entwined with what I saw, became a part of the grass, the drifting clouds, the cavernous hole. I know my father is dead, but I don't always remember. Sometimes darkness pulls and my mind falls blank. Sometimes his voice calls from somewhere in the future or deep in the past. Sometimes from somewhere I can't identify. A few months after he died, I started dreaming of him all the time. One night, my father laughing. I just can't remember him as happy, I said to Rachel in the morning. Well, he was always happy to see you. Really? That's the trouble with suicide, she said. It eclipses everything. These dreams ushered in memories, other illusory glimpses that arrived in daytime. My father at the kitchen sink, drinking lemonade from a jar, or skimming his bread with pieces of fat butter, the faint odor of a clove shampoo he frequently used, how he held a spoon low on the handle near its dome, how he held his razor the same way, fingers wrapped at the base of its head, chin tilting toward the bathroom mirror, the towel draped around his neck, how he organized and arranged things with fastidious care, his desk, his closet, his drawers, how he was always impeccably groomed, his unvarying wardrobe. In the working years, he wore a suit, and later on, he wore Henley shirts and khakis. He never wore shorts unless playing tennis. He never wore bright colors or patterns. His shirts were solid navy, white, or black. He often wore a baseball hat, absent of logos. He did have a Baltimore Orioles hat, not because he liked the team, but because he liked the bird. And he favored lug-soled boots all year long, even in the summer. The cassette tapes I found in his car, John Adams, Tom Waits, and all kinds of country music. When I was a child, he liked to play Herb Albert in the Tijuana Brass album, Whipped Cream and Other Delights, or at my mother's request, the Moody Blues' Days of Future Past. That was the decade of the Beatles, but we didn't have music in the house, nor that of the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, or Jimi Hendrix. In many ways, my parents were musically out of fashion. This might have later proven a huge disadvantage to me, except that my father made up for the gaps. He regularly brought singles of my favorite radio hits, Good Vibrations, Joy to the World, and To Sir with Love, which meant that he'd been paying attention to what I loved. We listened to the radio most often in the car, though sometimes I was allowed to tune the living room's radio transistor high and spin the volume. The most important single I remember was Van Morrison's 1967 Brown Eyed Girl, which my father miraculously pulled from an elastic pocket inside his briefcase one night after dinner. I watched the record emerge from its white sleeve, the black vinyl glossed in light. The turntable started to spin, the record and the needle both dropped, and then we started to dance. My father wasn't a good singer, and he rarely let it rip. But Brown-Eyed Girl made magic with him. Do you remember when we used to sing sha-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-da? The song became an anthem we shared. Soon, my father had a pet nickname for me, Brown-Eyed Bug. In future renderings, he took the liberty of altering Van Morrison's lyrics. Even now, when I hear the song, these are the words I hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet. In addition to being a baker, Klecko writes poems which have been featured in the New York Times, Chicago Tribune, Washington Post, and Martha Stewart Radio Live. He lives in a mansion kitty corner from where F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote his first novel. He launched a recent book at the Fitzgerald Museum in Montgomery, Alabama, where they let him sleep in Zelda's bed. Klecko's crowning achievement is that he is a disciple of Carol Connolly. Please welcome Klecko.
I'm bringing with me a helper for a moment. This is Bill Patterson, also known as Billy Bama. He's a character. He travels with me on the road. He drinks more than anyone in St. Paul, and I'm his sidekick often. Billy, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you'd be so kind, what I have here are hairnets. They've never been worn before, and they're clean. I'm going to ask, we can't force people, so don't force them, but try to politely insist that they should wear the hairnets. At the end, when the last one's out, don't come back and interrupt my set. Just hold on to it until the end.
Understood.
All right, you got it?
Yeah.
So while you're doing that and you're moving properly, I'll kill some time. As stated,
It should be obvious.
Yeah, why?
as stated earlier, my name is Klecko. I am the protege of the Duchess Carol Connolly. This is us in 2017. I lost my mentor during the pandemic, but anything you see me do well tonight, credit to her. Things that I missed the mark on, that's on me. By the way,
Break either way.
No, I don't. I do. Proud of it. Artsy. You look gorgeous.
thank you, Billy.
Welcome.
Thank you, Billy.
Yeah.
So I launched a book called Lincoln Land a while back in DC. And this is my first poem called Cocktails at the Watergate Hotel. The Tunisian had a quiet voice. Other times he muttered. About Earth, about monuments. During last call, the Tunisian requested a goblet filled with the liquor foreign to me. I like the word goblet, but at this moment I wasn't sure what made a goblet a goblet. I wondered if this was determined by the matter that made up the receptacle or the content that filled it. And I wondered if a chalice was a goblet or a cousin to a goblet. After pondering in further cocktails, it occurred to me, I like the word goblet. Thank you. I'm very open to clapping because I can tell that you were hesitant. Billy, poetry readings are different than Tavern on Grand. We'll talk about that afterwards. So now, I'm not an esoteric guy, but I was in Asheville, and I don't know about you guys, but when I go on vacation, I take vacation books. And I was reading Kafka. I was reading The Trial. I say funny things, but then I say Kafka and they laugh. And I thought I should try to write esoteric. And I don't know, I usually don't come up to poetry readings and read out of my genre, but it's a new liberating world and the world's changing. Here we go. Meeting Kafka. In a town where nothing happens, if you had a phone, I would call. But you don't. So I walk to your apartment through moon glow and mist. Knock, knock. You open. I don't enter, you exit. Into conversations that are general. One that segues into a warm moment without words, glances in a hallway under iridescent light. Tick-tock. We share time. Avoiding discomfort with false accounts until moments inch away. In a town where nothing happens to a place where such things are forgotten. Thank you. When I was a young man, I used to come home from work. And I would soak in the bathtub and I'd smoke cigarettes. And I would read the newspaper or Rolling Stone magazine. And I remember one particular morning, I was reading an article about Lou Reed at Madison Square Garden. And he walks out with a book of handwritten poems. Nobody knows. He opens it up and he reads a poem. And then he reads another. And someone from the audience says, "Hey Lou, play some rock and roll." To which Lou responded, "Fuck you, I am rock and roll." And I miss Lou Reed because in many ways, I feel that, he was a kind of a prophet for normal messed up people, of which I'm one. He has this piece I'm gonna read, and it was very helpful for me because it's about marriage. And I had a marriage that ended on the wrong note when I was very young. And so for a long time, I was angry because I was the one who got dumped. And so this anger, I realized wasn't anger because it was anger because I didn't realize I was sad, but I was too embarrassed to tell people I was sad, but I was sad. And this song kind of liberated me from that. And here we go in 3, 2, 1. When I think of you, Baton Rouge, I think of a mariachi band. I think of 16 in a crisp green football field. I think of a girl I never had. When I think of you, Baton Rouge, I think of a back seat in a car. Windows are foggy and so are we. As the police ask for our ID. So helpless. When was I the villain in your heart? Putting the brake on your start, you slapped my face and cried and screamed, That's what marriage came to mean, the bitterest ending of a dream. You wanted children, and I did not. What was that all about? You might get a laugh when you hear me shout. You might get a laugh when you hear me shout, I wish I had. So helpless. So thanks for the card, the announcement of child. And I must say, you and Sam look great. Your daughter's gleaming in that white wedding dress with pride. Sad to say, I could never bring that to you, that wide smile. So I try not to think of Baton Rouge or of the mariachi band or of 16 in the crisp green football field and the girl I never had. Thank you, Lou. Has anyone here seen Exorcist 6 yet? I'll tell you, I feel comfortable to tell you. It's a woke version, and people of all colors get possessed by the devil in this book or in the movie. And it's just, and then not only that, when it's time to heal the possessed people, it's not just one person, it's like a whole circle of people of all different faiths and religions and stuff like that. So we progress even in demonic possession. And I would like to read to you instructions for my exorcism. Nobody wakes up thinking they're going to be possessed by the devil. But it happens, and it could happen to me. So on the off chance an unclean spirit enters my body, you may witness stigmata, lesions on flesh, my skull twisting 360 degrees. In the event this happens, don't call the Vatican or send a priest from Rome. Don't quote the scriptures or compel me with Christ. It never works, never has, never will. On the off chance an unclean spirit enters my body, find me a nun, preferably one from St. Paul. But if for whatever reason one isn't available, find me that church basement lady, the one who bakes bunk cakes, because the only thing that's healed a thing is women. Now that I think of it, I'd even settle for a Lutheran. Thank you. So, a girl who I used to date, like in my childhood, was living out in LA, and she called me this summer and said, Klecko, I have friends that are coming through town in August. I would like you to take them out for cocktails. And they were going to the state fair and stuff. So I meet them, I get a table at W.A. Frost. The woman is an international food writer, and the guy from here, he trained years and years ago with our neighbor, Patricia Hampel, but then he went out to New York and became a Shakespearean actor, and then they went to LA. And so we're sitting there drinking vodka. It was just a hot, sweaty, wonderful patio night. We're drinking vodka tonics. And he says, Klecko, you're a poet, right? And I said, sir. And he said, well, did you ever see the movie The Doors? I said, yeah, I saw that. So what did you think about it? I said, yeah, I liked it. And it's Val Kilmer. And he said, let me tell you, I was Val Kilmer's instructor for that film. I said, no shit. He said, yeah, I was the instructor. I said, what'd you instruct him to do? He said, Val Kilmer was Christian Science, and in his faith, he was never allowed to do hallucinogens. So he wanted to understand the experience. And I said, so you tripped with Val Kilmer? And he said, that's my story to tell. Or I'm sorry, that's Val's story to tell. But I brought you a book written by Val Kilmer, and it's autographed. And it's funny, because oftentimes when Hollywood people do poetry books, they're pretty shitty, but they're really nice looking books, and they're blurbed by people like Cher, Robert Downey Jr., Sean Penn, and David Mamet. God. Anyways. But here's one that's pretty good. And look, I mentioned it's autographed. Did I tell you that? And then so when he gave it to me, I was touched, and there was like 10 people at the table, and then he kind of leaned over and he kissed me on the forehead. And I don't like when people kiss me, especially on the forehead. But you know, for whatever reason, it just kind of seemed all right. You know, sometimes we break boundaries, and anyways. All in simple. I'll tell you a deep secret if you let me pull your pigtails. Okay? Then, I used to climb in my daddy's t-shirt up the treehouse eucalyptus and jump a little boy air balloon. But I would land Jesus. I'd jump with my little white arms stretched out wide, and when I landed in the sand, I'd love everyone and everything the same, all in simple, every thought and every dream, from my ugly math teacher to the tiny sunbeam glintering through the eucalyptus feathers. And I would bless the bark and trunk, and I'd have a beard and long hair and take off my little boy jockey underwear and climb again and jump clean and whole as Jesus years ago. Jesus in my robe of daddy's underclothes flying towards Damascus. Wow. Damn, right? Bill Kilmer. In closing, I figured, you know, when you go to poets do poet things, Billy. And oftentimes, you know, so I try to bring a different thing to it, like joy. Okay, so I want to close with something. I do have the answer. I do have the answer. We talk about it's been a tough week. We talk about it's been a tough year. I have the answer. Just listen. Tavern on Grand. She was tall, shapely, and had high cheekbones. He was squatty with a pockmarked face. She was beautiful. He wasn't. I caught a glimpse of them working together, preparing walleye tacos side by side. Every time the service door swung open, I caught her smiling. Her eyes told the truth. She was enamored. I wonder how it transpired. What could such a perfect specimen see in a blemished cook? Then it occurred to me, hairnets. Hairnets were the common denominator. Both of them wore polypropylene bouffant caps, the ones that look like toilet seat covers, the ones that strip you of dignity the moment you slide them on your skull. Then it occurred to me, hairnets force us to look past vanity and into the heart. Kaboom. I finally cracked the code. Once I realized love would be easier to obtain if hairnets were passed out across the globe and all of us were brave enough to conform. My name is Danny Klecko. Thank you, St. Paul.
Thank you, Klecko, for another really shy rendition of your readings. It's always overwhelmingly unexpected, I guess. Thank you. And I'm the only one who kept mine on. Someone else has it on. Dralandra Larkins is an award-winning spoken word poet, arts educator, and co-editor of Cracked Walnut's anthology, Rewilding Hope 2023, based in Minneapolis. Through performance, she weaves together words, rhythm, and intimacy to create a safe space for healing and self-discovery. Her work is rooted in the art of healing, spirituality, and community. Publication of her work has appeared in the Minnesota Women's Press, the Edge Witness Writers, the Agates, and other anthologies. She's collaborated and competed on platforms including the NAACP Minneapolis, Minnesota Black Enterprise, and Green Room. She serves on the Cracked Walnut Board of Directors and is a member of the League of Minnesota Poets. Her poetic expression is a platform for advocacy, using spoken word to shed light on social issues and uplift marginalized communities. She is also the creator of the Pocket Poetry Dispenser at Next Chapter Booksellers in St. Paul, Minnesota. Please welcome Dralandra Larkins.
Hey y'all, so happy to be here with y'all tonight. I'm gonna read 4 poems tonight. And the first poem that I'm gonna read is actually a piece that I've been working on. It's an eco poem, so I've been experimenting with writing eco poems. So an eco poem is about the environment and how the environment relates to you as a person. So I'm gonna perform this piece. It's not finished, but I just figured that it would be nice practice tonight. And it's called Earth's Plea. Earth's got a heartbeat. From the seed, limbs, the dirt, the trees, humans complement Earth so perfectly. But how can we hear Earth beat when today we face so much environmental adversities, corporate corruption and human careless destruction? We're living in times where truth and lies stand on the same line. You turn on the TV, scroll through your news feed, but the news doesn't feed your mind. In fact, it makes us blind, desensitized to reality. We believe the fallacy and argue with facts. We don't want to learn, so we refuse to ask. We got war zones, illnesses, and disasters. We got our youth learning from social media and looking up to the masses. Real leaders remain absent, so where are the advocates? Silence. This is Earth's plea to stop the violence. Earth's pleas for resurrection. Like a skyscraper with no direction, this is Earth's plea for protection. Built upon soil where seeds of hope are trying to break free and grow into a tree, an orchard of love and kindness, where people live in peace and practice mindfulness. So take a deep breath and turn off the TV. You find true connection when you disconnect the Wi-Fi, because we're all the missing link. We must start by changing the way we live, what we eat, and how we think. Take down the towers of despair and show Earth gratitude for breath, for life, for air. Thank you. And then the second piece, I'm going to perform out of the Rewilding Hope book. So I was an editor for this book with Cracked Walnut, and it's available online at crackedwalnut.com. And so this first piece is called, or the second piece is called Coils, My Crown is My Garden. And I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the Crown Act, but the Crown Act is a law that prohibits hair discrimination, and specifically Afro-textured hair. So this poem is a response to that law. Remember when India R.E. sung, "Don't need your silicone, I prefer my own, what God gave me is just fine. My kinks and coils don't need to be defined, sleeked nor greased. My afro grows and flows up and outwardly, stretches the laws of science, defying gravity. I am magical, yeah, and the world lives inside me. My hair reflects God's nature, like the texture of thick bark on trees. Just hydrate my strands with rain, castor oil, cocoa butter, and baby, I smell like a sweet honeybee. My 4C is lovely because it's phenomenally made beautiful. I was kissed by the king who nourished my roots in holy water down to the cuticle, the follicle. My crown is my garden. and each seed that I plant, the coil blossoms strong and abundantly beyond the white soil of embedded conditioning. We were taught to think that nappy is dreadful, to feel ashamed of 4C hair that can't be contained with their bobby pins. And so our sister locks don't bend to Western beauty conformity. As we rebel like Angela and march for peace, our curls and coils be dancing in the wind so boldly and free. Our magnificent hair was created to wander and to stare in orbit, stardust, and black infinity, for all to see that the standard is kinky, is coily. Don't need your silicone, I prefer my own. What God gave me is just fine. So I sing the song like India Ari, because I am and will be naturally me. Thanks so much. This third piece is called I'm Black. So this is a piece that I'm often known for. It's my award-winning piece. And I've been writing this poem since I was in 6th grade. So every year it sounds different. Every time I perform it, it sounds different because I'm always revising it. I'm always adding things, taking things out. So it's always a different poem. I'm black. Blacker than you can understand. I come from goddesses who wore their essence in the palms of their hands, always uplifting sisters like no other can. I wear the virtue, breathe life into my brothers like no other man, 'cause I am love and light. Come look into my sight and see my reflection. My brown-skinned mother gave birth to me so I could give birth to a new generation of African queens who inspired to create meaningful inspiration. And I never embrace hatred. I got sister blood and soul all over my shoelaces. And if you tie those together, it reveals my true genes and my true nature. Right. Black like West African women with thick hips and full lips, like single mothers with tight fists, like fried eggs, cornbread, jollof rice, jerk chicken, fish chips, and grits, 'cause this is soul food, child. You know, soul food. Black like coffee with no cream. Black like silent screams, Dr. King's I have a dream, let freedom ring. I'm just black. Black enough to fight for civil rights. Black enough to reflect the light. Black enough to broadcast my pride like Sojourner Truth. Ain't thou a woman? Black enough so that when these words touch, they leave fingerprints on your very soul. So how black? Black enough so that when these words touch, they leave fingerprints on your very soul. Black from within. Ancestors who unlock the mystery that lies between Genesis and Revelations. Black enough to stick up like a sore thumb and represent a new nation. Black enough to spot and think before I speak. Black enough to absorb more than just heat. See, this is knowledge and I am wisdom. Understand me, see. I'm a proud African American, richness in my melanin, mocha skin, kingsmen. You know it's legit because fight the powers in the blood of my heritage. With a little bit of civil rights, Assata Shakur, single black mothers in the struggle, hip hop, Tupac, Jay-Z is a hard knock, Motown, James Brown, James Baldwin, Huey, Colin Kaepernick, Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, Rena Moran, Sandra Bland, and Malcolm X to be the keeper to my brother man. See, when I pass on another individual, I would so lovingly, so proudly, unapologetically say, baby, you're black, blacker than you'll ever understand. And then, so that was the third, okay. So the last piece is, I'm gonna wrap it up and end it with a letter to love yourself. So I always end my performances with this affirmation poem, just because I think it's a great message for any time, for anyone at any time and place. So it's an affirmation poem, a letter to love yourself. Love yourself. Do not believe society's concept of beauty, because truly you are a masterpiece, created by the master God. You are beautiful. You're skin and bone human. You're not made of metaphors, but your strength is fire. It's never ending. It doesn't burn out. Let no one hold your power. You're the queen, king of your tower. Breathe. So you found the strength to keep going. So hold on just a little longer. What doesn't kill you makes you a conqueror. So you've got to be brave. David conquered your Goliath and slay. Just love yourself. And nah, I'm not talking about if you buy a new pair of shoes with your fresh taper cuts or your brows on fleek, edges sleek, so you shared a tweet and now you're feeling yourself. I'm talking about heal yourself from the roots of your core. Because if you won't acknowledge who you truly are, then what is your purpose for? So this is to the society that made you feel like your black is not a boastful believer. And this is to the society that made you feel unsatisfied with the skin that you're in. Fall in love with your imperfections, skin, smile, face, collarbones. You are a blessing, and don't second guess it. Because I absolutely, indefinitely, wholeheartedly love me unconditionally. Do not believe society's concept of beauty, because truly, you are a masterpiece. Thank you all so much, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Dralandra. It's always great to hear you. And of course, I forgot to pass the little basket around, which is a little tradition we have here, because Unity is so kind to let us use this room, and we ask if you have just a couple of cents or dollars to offer something to the church. So I'm just going to pass this around. I'm sure they take Venmo. So thank you again so much to Kirk Wilson, Juliet Patterson, Klecko, and Dralandra Larkins. There are books available here for sale. I don't know if Juliet, did you bring any? Oh, okay. So Juliet, do you have a website?
I do.
So Juliet website.
Local independent.
Yeah, always go to local independent bookstores and look for her website. And the next writers that will be reading in November are Aaron Sharkey, Freya Manfred, Clarence White, and Lauren Niemi. So thank you all so much for coming. This means a lot to the community to be able to have Midstream still here, and that people come out and hear poetry and writers. It means a lot to all of us. Thanks again. Some of us may be going to Sweeney's if you want to join us, but otherwise have a lovely evening. Thanks again.